Welcome back, everyone, to today's EOcafe. Unfortunately for today, you won't have Jeff, but you have myself and Monica, so you're in good hands. Today, we're going to be discussing how Earth observation can support the implementation of the UN Sustainable Development Goals now and on the road to 2030. Before we go any further, I would just like to have a reminder of the rules. So feel free to leave your camera on. It's really nice to see you if we can, but please do mute yourself for now. We would ask you to put the questions in the chat so we can have a look. And then when we come to the time where we'll be asking questions, we'll ask yourself to unmute yourself and ask your question directly. So with that being said, I will pass over to Monica, my colleague Monica Miguel Lago, who is our senior project manager and our internal Earth expert on the SDGs. So Monica, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tanya, and good afternoon, everyone. Definitely, and also I will say welcome to the EOcafe. Well, I think already Tanya mentioned we are trying to unlock the EO for SDGs, so we will try to discuss about the 2030 agenda. So this agenda has built as a data and evidence-based plan. So it turns somehow this vision into 17 sustainable development goals with 169 targets and 231 global indicators. So it's a lot of numbers, a lot to measure. And these are the ones that are tracking progress. So it's also recognized that one area of this improvement also affects the progress in others. So, but we are now 10 years ahead of this, after this 2015 when it was approved. And we have some things, some reflections on this. Data still really matters. It helps us to use the risk, shape the better policies, but also spawn the trends. But we also know that we are not where we would like to go or we would like to be. So because we know that also 1/3 of the targets are on track, but one half of indicators are progressing too slow and 1/5 are in regression. So they are really in backwards. So in this context is where we think that new data as Earth observation for satellite-derived data is really proven and is still giving a lot of value to be injected into the SDG agenda. So it's helping to measure change, fill data gaps, and also report on the monitoring on these indicators. So we have many activities as the community looking into how co-design Earth observation into these SDGs monitoring and reporting. SDG SIZE is one of the projects, but also European Space Agency has been is historically putting forward many activities moving from projects to operationalization of the monitoring and reporting on these indicators. But now need to go and to do a step further. And we think that is timely because 2030 agenda is in 5 years ahead and discussions are already in place. So we would like to be as a NEO to shape this transition pathway, fit the models and also scenarios, guide investments, and also check whether actions are really changing on the ground. So with this 2027 Global Sustainable Development Report, we consider that it's a key moment to rethink how science, data, and the different SDGs pathways are coming together. So we will see that geospatial could be a kind of a spatial backbone of the whole SDG journey. So today's EOcafe will be basically about that. We will try to move from indicators to policy design to finance to implementation. And definitely, I think I'm honored really to unpack this journey with our fantastic speakers. We have two leading voices with us. We have Professor Phoebe Condoury. She's professor at the Economics University and the Athens University, and Dr. Mark Paganini, which is technical officer at European Space Agency. With that in mind, I will not talk about their biographies. I will hand over to them because they could really give us in this journey how they have been from this research path into the discussions about the SDGs. So Phoebe and Mark, maybe you could introduce yourselves and also give us a little bit of background how you got there. Thank you. Maybe starting with Phoebe.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Monica, for having me here. And thank you for focusing on this interaction between Earth observation and the SDGs, which is absolutely crucial. I am a professor of economics at the University of Economics in Athens and a professor at Earth Sciences at the Department of Earth Sciences at the University of Cambridge. This double chair indicates exactly what I do, where I come from. So throughout the 30 years of my academic career, I've been working on developing innovative systems transformations for the sustainable interaction between nature, economy, and society. By training, I'm a mathematical economist, a modeler, and statistician, econometrician. So data-driven approaches, but also data-hungry modeling is crucial for my work. I founded and lead since 1997 the Alliance of Excellence for Research and Innovation on Aiphoria, which is the Greek word for sustainability, which brings together the different research centers that I lead, the innovation accelerators that have derived from our research, accelerating more than 250 spin-offs every 5 years. It also brings together the science policy networks that I am involved at the global level, and also the academic and scientific associations that I am a fellow in, or president or chair. To cut a long story short, throughout my career, I was always in this focus on trying to identify this optimal interaction between the different forms of capital, natural capital, economic capital, and social capital. And it was until 2015 that we actually had a global international agreement along those lines, where 193 states of the world have agreed on a framework, the SDG framework, UN Agenda 2030, that exactly transposes this need for the interaction between nature, society, and economy into a global agreement, and pushes for policy frameworks across the globe that transpose that agreement into actual operational work on the ground to get our development on a sustainable pathway.
Thank you. You anticipated some of the questions already in my side. But before going to the alternatives, let's hear how now we would like to have the EO component on board, and for that we have Mark. So maybe Mark, we quickly start connect some ideas that Phoebe might mention on your pathway.
Thanks, Monica. Thanks for inviting me to these interesting discussions. I think you know the 2030 agenda for sustainable development has been there already for more than 10 years. We are close to the 2030 agenda, and we have achieved a lot in terms of Earth observation integrations into the SDG processes, both at global and at local and national and local levels, but there is much more to be done, and we need to start thinking about what will happen after 2030, and that's also the main topic I think we are going to discuss today, on how we can do better what we already do quite well, I must say. So I'm a technical officer at the European Space Agency in the Directorate of Earth Observation Programs. I have more than 30 years of experience in Earth observations. I started actually my career as a ground segment engineer, and then I moved to science and applications. And for the past 20 years, I've actually worked on developing Earth observation application to support environmental governance and sustainable development. And in that role, I've been representing, and I continue to represent ESA in several multilateral environmental agreements and global policy frameworks. This includes, and I think it's important to mention also the other framework and policy framework, because they are all closely connected. They all contribute, they all have a sustainable development approach to their policies. So I'm representing ESA at the CBD, the UN Convention on Biological Diversity, the UNCCD, the UN Convention to Combat Desertifications, the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands, and of course the 2030 Agenda on Sustainable Development. I'm not doing the climate, Phoebe. I know that you're very much involved in climate, but of course anything we do is in a way connected to climate. So, but we do have, ESA had delegations at the recent COP of the UNFCCC. And I'm also closely involved in the ecosystem accounting framework of the UN system of environmental economic accounting, which brings me a bit more into natural capital accounting and the connections between the environment and the economy. So what can I say? I mean, what motivates me the most is really to turning Earth observation data into practical contribution to the decision-making process that implement this sustainable development concept in the various policy frameworks.
So I will keep now this decision-making process and also the different agendas that you have addressed at the UN. So maybe this Global Sustainable Development Report, apart from looking into the SDGs, is also interconnecting with other agendas. So maybe Phoebe, could you let us know a little bit more about this Global Sustainable Development Report? We know that the 2027 is going to be a kind of kickoff somehow from these discussions for the post-2030 agenda. How in practical way you put all this knowledge, how data is integrated there, how is this process?
Yes, so the Global SDR, Sustainable Development Report, is something that happens every 4 years. And it is an assessment of assessments and aims in identifying the progress with regards to implementation of the SDGs across the globe. So it assesses all reports, voluntary, scientific, policy reports that have to do with the implementation of the SDGs. And at the same time, the mission of this report is to bring science closer to policy. It's a science policy interface report in order to identify ways to increase the implementation performance against the SDGs. And if you wanted my quick cut on the Global SDR 2027, for which I've been assigned as the chief scientist. I will first say that this will be the last report before the 2030 deadline. So it will update the world with regards to what we have achieved until 2027 and what we expect to do with this framework 27 to 2030 and then beyond 2030. So it will partly shape this global agreement on the SDGs. And let me here just say that this is the international agreement that has been signed by more countries than any other global agreement in the UN. So at the moment, what we have, at least according to my view, is a brilliant framework, a very comprehensive framework for transformation towards sustainable development. And why do we need a framework? We need a framework because we are at a state of a multi-crisis. And unfortunately, this is a permanent multi-crisis. And what are the crises that we are facing? Well, We all know about climate crisis, the increase that we feel it as the increased frequency and severity of extreme weather events. Now that I'm talking, there is a storm in Athens, a very heavy storm in Athens. Schools are closed because of the storm. We are facing biodiversity collapse. These are the main environmental crises, together with the increasing water scarcity crisis. And this creates food insecurity, energy insecurity, water insecurity, of course. And this crisis should be added to the population crisis. So we have aging population in the global north and a booming population in the global south. Very difficult to manage the needed reallocation of resources and the resulting immigration for this crisis. Then, in addition to the environmental crisis and the population crisis, we have increasing inequality, not only between the global north and the global south, but also within countries and even within developed countries. Income groups are moving apart in terms of their capacity and access to resources and ability to have a decent living. On top of this crisis, we have economic crisis. Growth rates are very low. We have inflationary pressures. We have 1/3 of the countries in the world being at the brink of default, together with our inability to integrate in our production processes the cutting edge technologies. Why? Because the technological pace of advancement is very fast, but we have not built a labor market that has the capacity to absorb this pace, and we have not built regulatory processes that can absorb this technology in a way that is safe. So all these crises together bring a geopolitical crisis, with the multilateral system really being at the brink of falling apart. The situation at the UN is very difficult. What are the good news? And I will try to close very, very fast. The good news is that the SDG framework is indeed that framework that allows us to bring all these systems that are in crisis into conversation and try to transform them in a synergistic way in order to get our development, our livelihoods on a sustainable pathway, a pathway that will meet the needs of the present without putting at risk the needs of future generations, without putting at risk the natural systems, the ecosystem boundaries, the planetary boundaries, while not putting at risk social cohesion. So nature, society, and economy can talk together in a way that supports the welfare of all nations. And the good news is that not only we have the framework, 17 SDGs, 169 targets, but we also know that humanity possesses the science, the technology. We have the science, the technology, the policies, and even the financial resources in a blended mode between public and private sector to achieve the SDGs. Yet, implementation remains strikingly low. That is, we have a multi-crisis. The multi-crisis is of a permanent nature. We have it for a long time. It doesn't seem that it is going away. But on the other hand, we have an international agreement that is able to solve this crisis. And we even have the science, the technology, the policies, and the money to implement the international agreement that it it is the blueprint that will allow us to get out of the crisis. So why do we have so low implementation? Why implementation with regards to the SDGs, as Monica said, is so low, and on average, in quantitative terms, is below 20% across the globe. Of course, some regions of the world are much advanced, like Europe. So why do we have this? For me, the why lies in the lack of capacity to understand the agenda, to have a real operationalization of the agenda, plus the accountability. It is a voluntary reporting. It does not request accountability with regards to that. So what I am looking for in this agenda is a robust operational structure, explicitly tasked with designing and driving SDG implementation at scale, while continuous assessment of the impact of the implementation is done and communicated to all stakeholders.
Thank you, Phoebe. I mean, you gave a lot of keywords there about multi-crisis implementation. Also all this multilateralism. I mean, many actors working together. Maybe before going to this implementation, and also to allow also Mark to go also and to digest a little bit on that direction. How do you see the EO, Earth observation, really contributing to the agenda? And also maybe then, Phoebe, could you guide us on this implementation? Probably they are already defined steps that we will guide through. So maybe Mark, you could comment on how your vision and how that EO is already contributing is this side. And maybe Phoebe, you will connect on these implementation steps.
Absolutely.
Okay, no, it's very, it brings a lot of inspiration, what Phoebe just said. What I can say, I mean, before I'm talking about the importance of Earth observations in the 2030 agenda, I think let me briefly explain how ESA and the Earth observation community, because we work obviously together, is engaged in the 2030 agenda. First, I must say that we have a long-standing collaboration with many UN organizations, and we know the importance of these UN organizations like FAO, like UNEP, like UN Habitat. By the way, we even have a memorandum of collaboration, of understanding with these organizations, and they play a key role in the implementation of the SDGs, because the SDGs is actually, the 2030 agenda is a collaborative framework. So we need to bring all, it's defined at the UN level and implemented by countries. So we work closely with them. We work closely with, as I said, with the secretariat of the, and the scientific bodies, it's important, of the 3 Rio conventions and the convention on wetlands that I mentioned before. And with all these organizations, we are supporting them to integrate Earth observation technologies in their processes. And I must say, we are doing a great work in this. I think now we can say that in all these multilateral environmental agreements, there is a place for Earth observation, and Earth observations is put even in the decision that are taken at the COPs, at the Conference of the Parties of these conventions. A second line of activity, and that's very important, and I'm sure that Phoebe will come back on this when we will talk about the finance mobilizations, is the work we do with the IFIs, the international financial institutions, which are the World Bank and the Regional Development Bank, like the Asian and the Inter-American Development Banks. And these collaborations in ESA and with the Earth observation companies have started already 10 years ago. And the aim we had was to mainstream the use of Earth observations in the development aid processes and projects. That means at the level of the countries. And that's what we've been doing. Together with the IFIs and the client countries, we really worked on a wide range of sustainable development domains. I mean, I can mention disaster resilience, urban sustainability, clean energy, water resource, climate resilience. I mean, just to name a few of them. And now we can say that Earth observation is an operational part of the development planning and implementations of these IFIs, and a component of the sustainable financing mechanism. And the third pillar is our engagement with the statistical community, because to do all of this, we need data. And we've worked closely at global level with the UN agencies who are the custodians of the SDG indicators, but also this interagency an expert group on SDG indicators and the working group they have on geospatial information. At national level, we work obviously with the national statistical offices because they're the one providing very often the data to develop the development pathways. And we worked also closely with the line ministries and the academic partners. They are very important as well to integrate Earth observation in the national processes. And what about data and Earth observation? Well, data is at the core of the sustainable development. The importance of data has been recognized right at the beginning of the SDGs in 2015. There was a report, if I remember well, requested by the UN Secretary General at that time I think it said to mobilize the data revolution for sustainable development, the data revolution. And that was set in 2015, 10 years ago. And I should also mention at the first World Data Forum in 2017, there was a global action plan for sustainable development, and it called for a number of critical action that included the modernization of the NSOs, which was seen very critical for achieving the SDGs, and the necessity to integrate geospatial data and Earth observations with statistical data. And I can say that meeting the ambition of the 2030 agenda required and still requires today the collection, processing, analysis, and disseminations of an amazing amount of data and statistics at global, national, and local level. And these are provided by multiple stakeholders. And that's the biggest challenges, this data collection and integration, the biggest challenges that we have on the SDG agenda, especially if we want to ensure that no country is left behind. So what can I say? I must say that the EO community has been very active in promoting the value of Earth observation for the SDGs. I must say also that the global indicator framework has not been defined with an Earth observation mindset, as I always say. But we have managed, I think, to work really closely with the custodian agencies from the UN and with the national stakeholders, and also with some international partners like the Group on Earth Observations and CRs, the Community on Earth Observation Satellites, to integrate Earth observations in the methodological guidelines that are developed by the UN agencies and are implemented by the countries. So we can say that Earth observation is already contributing very well to the SDG indicator, even if more could be done. And I believe that our work over the past decade has made these indicators more timely available, more consistent, more accessible, but we need a better framework after 2030.
Yeah, so we are driving somehow to this implementation, and through this implementation, we are understanding there are some steps. Also, you mentioned a little bit on that before, Phoebe. So maybe you could explain about these steps. You hear about Mark that has been contributing already extensively EO, and then maybe through these steps you could connect where do you see the contribution of EO in the different ones.
Absolutely. So let me just start by saying that we cannot implement the SDGs without Earth observations. We cannot make real problem without geospatial data. It's impossible. So if there are two communities that need to work together, are the communities that produce the data, including geospatial observation, but also statistical data, socio-economic data, in order to bring the natural ecosystem, the infrastructural ecosystem, the economic ecosystem, and social ecosystem into conversation. And the aim here, at least in my vision, and I hope the global SDR vision, will be to create an open access global commons, preferably digital, dedicated to implementing the SDGs, which will give an operational structure that will allow the alignment of all the global efforts, the data, the models, the tools that can ensure effective capacity and coordination and can ensure delivering results on the grounds. Results that are supported by the efficient and transparent channeling of technological transfer, financial flows, capacity building for all the stakeholders that need to be engaged in this transformation. So let me just share one slide just to just to sketch how I envision this happening. This is just one slide, and there will be no second slide. So I'm just making myself clear on that so that you don't think I'm going to give you a presentation, academic presentation. So the idea is that in order to implement the SDGs, we can do it in a 3-steps approach. It's a data 3-steps approach, a data hungry 3-steps approach. It's a science hungry 3-steps approach, but it's doable. We have done it in many case studies. It's doable. Is it scalable? I will argue yes, if we have the data. So the first step is to continuously monitoring and assess the implementation of the SDGs in each and every scale you are interested in. Global, regional, national, subnational, even a company, institutional, university level. We have now developed extensive KPIs, indices that allow us to continuously monitor and assess. And we are allowed, we can do this, we have this ability because there is plethora of data nowadays. There is geospatial data, there is Internet of Things data that can be used with clever algorithms in order to identify important patterns and correlations that you need for your models. There is socio-economic data. There is real-time data from sensors and drones that can give you the information that you need in order to measure where you are with regards to the SDGs. Once you know where you are, and you have agreed globally that you know where to go, the full implementation of the SDGs, what you really need to do at step 2 is to design the pathways that will allow you to go from the level of implementation you have today to the full implementation you envision by 2030 or 2045, which is another date that we keep hearing in the multilateral arena, or even 2050, which is the goal basically set with the European Green Deal within the European framework. Now, in order to design these pathways, again, you have a data hectic, modeling hectic, but also stakeholder interaction hectic job to do. The first thing, which is already done in most countries in the world, and definitely done beautifully in Europe, is to transpose the SDG framework, the 17 SDGs, 4 of them about the environment, climate, water, land, marine, 8 of them about society, 4 of them about economy, and the last one, the collaboration for the implementation of the goals. So in Europe, for example, we have transposed these 17 SDGs and the 169 targets into a very rich policy framework with laws and regulations and policies. The whole bunch of these laws and regulations is called the European Green Deal, and it contains 150 laws and regulations. So for each and every bit that is taken into account in the SDGs, we have a deadline, we have a regulation, it's obligatory, it's our national law, it's even our national commitments within Europe, but also in other international frameworks, the COP for the climate, the COP for biodiversity, the COP for water. It's relevant for our work with the multilateral financial institutions, so the national commitments are there. So we know where we are, we know where we want to go. How are we going to go there? Well, we need a really systems approach of true analysis, of modeling analysis of the different systems, and at the same time, constant interaction with the stakeholders to validate our modeling approaches, not approaches, but our modeling parameters that at the end of the day will give the countries, the ministries, the policymakers, but also the financial institutions, the businesses, and the civil society explicit recommendations of the investments and the changes in governance and policies that are needed in order to achieve the SDGs. Our framework that you see on the right-hand side of the slide, which says pathways for SDG and national commitments implementation, system science modeling, and stakeholder co-design. Basically, what it does, it downscales climate scenario, it downscales population scenario, it downscales growth scenario, and then has an integrated model that brings together submodels of land, water use, marine use, energy and transport, and it solves in a way what are the changes that each and every of these systems need to implement in order to optimize the pathways, that is, to achieve the goals by 2030, 2050 with the least cost and the most efficient pathway forward. So in every year, you know how much investments you need in renewables, which renewables, soil, wind, hydrogen. You know how you have to change your cropping partners in agriculture, your diet, in order to achieve biodiversity goals and food security goals and climate goals. It's very detailed. And this can be done only if you have a lot of data, if you have serious modeling efforts, and we have them at global scale, and you are really committed to discussing the different steps of your data and modeling approach with the stakeholders of the units of analysis that you are interested in. If you are at the national stage, you need to talk to the ministries, you need to talk to the regions of the country, to the local authorities, and make sure that after you finish this step 3, and I'm closing this and I can come back, you ask the crucial question: how do I finance these pathways? How do I care for the vulnerable? So the distributional equity issues of leaving no one behind. And how do I create a labor market that has the capacity of implementation? Because if you don't have capacity, if you don't have the skills in the labor market, you might have the best solution pathway, you might have the finances to implement it, but if the people do not have the skills for implementation and they are not on board owners of the pathways and shareholders of the pathways, nothing will ever be implemented. So I'll stop here.
Yeah, thank you, Phoebe, and I think it's very illustrative, this graphic. Maybe my question now will definitely is just to go for Mark, because having just see all these steps that, these 3 clear steps that Phoebe mentioned about the measures, the indicators, this modeling part, and then this financing and final implementation. And also recalling what you have been presenting, Mark, before about all the activities that ESA or other member states or even other companies also working for SDGs are already taking in place. How EO is really contributing to these steps and how the community could do more to feed these steps with data, but not only, as we commented before, policy is very important. This transition about the implementation of that certain policy that needs this data. So how the community is already doing and how is looking forward to contribute more.
So, yeah, I mean, it's probably I would like to focus a bit more on the step 2, because that's probably where we need to do more. I think we are already well. I mean, the modeling part, yes, because I mean, this concept of science-based integrated modeling to develop this holistic development pathway that incorporate all the dimensions of sustainable development, which means the economic growth, the social well-being, and the environmental protection, is a concept that on which that resonates, I must say, strongly to me and to my agency, but on which we definitely need to do more in ESA, so in my agencies, but also within the Earth observation community. And as you know very well, Monica, I mean, the EO community has recently engaged quite a lot in the development of digital twins. And we do have actually in ESA a program called Digital Twins of the Earth, DTE. And it's an initiative that builds first on the availability of continuous flow of satellite observations, and we have petabytes of satellite data that can inform the models, and I should obviously mention the Copernicus program. But the DTE also built on the advances in digital technology, such as artificial intelligence and the modeling techniques. I think Phoebe mentioned a lot the importance of models, and it builds also on the democratizations of high performance computing, which now allows to run very complex simulations at scales, and where that was not possible a few years ago. And so bringing these elements together, we are able to create these virtual replicas or these digital twins of key components of the Earth systems. The problem is that our DTE has been focusing, our DTE program has been focusing essentially on Earth system science, with digital twins dedicated to the climate systems, to meteorology, to extreme events, or to the major Earth system cycles, such as the carbon cycles and the water cycles. And what I believe, it's important now to bring the socio-economic dimension in our digital twins, in order to have this integrated and dynamic modeling that Phoebe is calling, to develop this holistic development pathway. And that's a step that ESA and the Earth observation community must really take. I mean, to evolve our digital twins to integrate the 3 dimensions of the sustainable development, which is the environmental aspects or the nature aspects with the economic and those social aspects. And only such an integrated modeling framework would allow us to really to develop reliable and robust what-if scenarios that Phoebe mentioned, that can support the development of future policies. So for me, this is really the key element now, is that Earth system science modeling is important, but we need to integrate the socioeconomic aspects in our models and in the work we do on models. We are not really developing the models, but we need to work with Phoebe to make to bring the data and the Earth observation data easily accessible for her to do modeling work.
I could not agree more. Yeah, you did, Phoebe. Sorry.
Absolutely. The vision is this integration of the socioeconomic layer.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you that the socioeconomic layer depends heavily on the natural spatial layer. All production and consumption activities need natural capital, natural resources. We have developed, and it is a big part of my work as well, we have developed very detailed econometric approaches that allow us to go beyond GDP, that allow us to measure the economic value, monetize, if you allow us, the ecosystem services. And we see a very vivid spatial element in this valuation. So it's not, water does not mean anything. It depends where the water is located, what kind of stock and flows it has, what kind of harvesting behavior by the society and the economy that has access to it, what kind of uses, competing uses, is it drinking, is it irrigation, it is supporting and regulating ecosystem, is this cultural, even spiritual values. So all of this needs to be integrated. Otherwise, the economy is totally disengaged from what is happening on the planetary boundaries. And although this was okay before our technological revolutions, the first was agriculture, the second was industrial, and so on, before we didn't have the technology. We didn't have the technology to have a crucial influence on the ecosystem services. We could not cause man-made non-linearities to these ecosystem services on which our economy and society depends. But with the technology, since agricultural revolution and after, we had this huge structural break where we had the means to destroy or use wisely these resources, but we forgot about it. So it's not anywhere in the decisions, in the production decisions, in the consumption decisions, in the policy decisions. And the last 70 years, we try to correct for that. I stop here just to leave time for questions. Yeah.
And indeed, thank you, because we do have questions. I see that at least a couple, one of those is partially answered by you already, but I will leave the floor to Gail for Wolfram. It's a question about the these implementation steps a little bit, but maybe, Gail, do you want to take the floor?
Yeah, thank you, Monica. This is Wolfhard. And thank you, Phoebe. You really already, sorry, my camera still isn't working. I had an update done here, but it failed to get the camera back up. In any case, Phoebe, you basically really answered my questions, and Mark, you answered another part. But still, what puzzles me is, do we really have two preconditions to enter Earth observation in terms of data, but then also in terms of value adding and in terms of turning these data into higher level information? Do we have two preconditions to successfully do this? And if you don't, then what do you see is needed to get there? What I'm referring to is, again, the two preconditions. One would be, do we already know exactly what kind of information contents have the highest priority? For instance, to be entered into a digital twin, PV, you just said very crucially, integrating physical data or physical geography data, for instance, with socio-economic data is crucial. Now, do we already know exactly how to parameterize the data, already the information requirements to then lead to targeted data processing and higher information processing? Because I could see this being a very complex approach, but hey, we can do it. We can solve it, and there's more than just AI to do so. But that also leads me to the second precondition question: do we have that, and what is needed to get there? Do we really have the tool sets Do we have all of the tool sets, or do we have already a few that we can get started? And how do we step by step develop a whole mechanism, in that case, a whole technological ecosystem to address the SDGs? Well, finally, final question, sorry about that, also is who is going to pay for all that? Do we have the funds? This addresses basically ESA, this addresses the Commission, but also large corporations who need to live up to SDGs. Do we have the funds to do all that? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. So we have a lot of modeling work that integrates these layers. My team has been involved over the last 30 years in more than 30 interdisciplinary, multi-institutional projects funded by the European Commission, but also other entities, philanthropic, institutional, but also multilateral entities that, have made explicit the different models, and there are various versions of different models around that allow this integration. So if you have the models, it means you know what data you need to fit the models in order to give you the results. I have to say here that the lower the scale in terms of the more focused the case study of implementation, the easier it is. The more global you get, challenges evolve, but it is something under our belt. What we don't have is an explicit, let's say, call of digital twins. We work in many projects on digital twins, but it is not an explicit requirement of the call to really integrate socio-economic modeling. You can simulate different scenarios of the earth layer, even the infrastructural layer, and then you can do cost-benefit analysis or impact analysis to see what will be the socioeconomic impacts. This is not good enough because the society and the economy are living ecosystems with many agents. They have their own behavioral structures, dynamic and spatial structures, like the natural ecosystems. And you really need to integrate the models. It's not enough to do an impact assessment of different scenarios that you can derive from the Earth system modeling. So in response to your question, which I think is very important because it points to operationalization, we really need a sincere funding on the actual integration of the modeling of the Earth ecosystems, the modeling of the engineering systems, the energy grid, the water networks, the resilient infrastructures in the country to hedge against the risk of extreme events. And on top of them, the real models of an economy in terms of what happens to the different sectors, to the different agents within the sectors, how they behave, how they absorb natural resources, how they absorb human capital, man-made capital, and how they transpose that into goods and services, how they consume it, and what that production and consumption means for the society, what jobs it offers, what kind of equity distributional effects, what kind of social cohesion is there, what kind of capacity building you need to do in order to improve the way the economy and the society works with you. So we need a true CCR digital twin that incorporates the socioeconomic layer. We have done lovely work on the socioeconomics, integrating maybe infrastructural systems as well, but the work remains to be done with regards to integrating earth systems with socioeconomic systems. And we need to find the funders for them, maybe in blended finance as well.
Yes, thank you, Phoebe, because about the integration, I just see another question maybe that is connected also with the integration that is about interoperability. I don't know if, Emmanuel, do you want to jump in on this?
Yes, good afternoon. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Looking at the slides from Phoebe, I was wondering how we can combine, I would say, all those data, which are very different from one to another. And it came out of my mind this OGC open specification DGGS, discrete global grid system, which is, for me, super interesting, exactly for that, for combining very different things, still having X, Y, Z, maybe T coordinates all together. So that's the first point. And the second point, it is preparing machine readable data, I would say. So it is enabling AI and GeoAI using DGGS. So thanks for your answer in the chat, but happy to listen more to your.
And also, do you have another second question about how do you see the involvement of these companies embracing SDGs in real life? I don't know if you wanted to expand also on this question.
Yeah, so that's so DGGS is a super specific technical topic, and indeed I have a second question regarding how large companies are really using SDGs in their core business. So I'm not speaking about marketing, but really core business. Do you see some progress there? And I will put in the chat an example of AXA Group Operation and the head of R&D mentioning specifically satellite imagery for their activities. So I'm positive, but I'd like to hear your view as well, Phoebe and Mark. Thanks.
I will say that this is probably the last question we take, and also a response from Phoebe and Mark. Thank you.
Okay, Mark, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can be extremely brief. I mean, it's just a few points on the two questions, on the two sets of questions that we just get. On the data, of course. I mean, this is a key point, because we need to have fit for purpose data sets that fit into the models. There are a lot of initiative on building these essential variables, and you know this, Phoebe, for sure. I mean, in different domain, and the climate is of course the most well-known ones. I mean, we know what are the climate data that are important in order to do the climate modeling of the Earth systems, and other communities that has developed their own essential variables, like the biodiversity, that has defined a set of variables that are important to understand the trends in biodiversity. The same for agriculture, the same for wetlands, the same for the ocean. So we need to go through a prioritization process on one side to see which data needs to be made available and in which form. And then the modeling aspect is important. I mean, when we talk about interoperability, is interoperability in terms of data, in terms of modeling. And there's a very nice example, I don't want to be too long, and that we have done in the context of the ecosystem accounting framework of the system of environmental economic accounting that moves from physical terms on ecosystem extent condition and services into the evaluations of the ecosystem services, and and that's maybe a way to respond to the last questions, where we try to see how we can have flexible systems that is intelligent enough to integrate data and models together through metadata systems. And I know, Monica, you care a lot about metadata, but metadata is not only about data, it's also about models. And I must say, and we developed together with some companies in Spain at BC3 a very nice platforms that add also some AI in order to guide the users, in order to better integrate the data and the models together. It's quite challenging, I must say, but I've seen this in practice, and I must say that I'm really impressed by what we can achieve today. Now, I know that what Phoebe has been describing is even more ambitious, because it's really integrating all aspects in a sort of integrated model. That's the next step, but I think we have the building blocks in order to achieve that.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, Phoebe, do you have final remarks on these questions?
Yes, first I wanted to say that in order to use this data, of course, you need to seriously work on the interoperability of this data. And of course, it will be a challenge. It's not easy. Socioeconomic data is a different creature than spatial data. But we have a long history of using spatial data in econometrics and in economic modeling. We know the challenges, we have solutions to the challenges, we have used it effectively, we have used it at the very micro level in order to identify efficient production, augmenting practices in input selection for farmers at parcel level and increase productivity. And we have also implemented spatial data at national level. So we have expertise, and we need to focus on this in order to produce this dialogue that will lead to the true interaction of the socioeconomic systems with the earth systems. If we don't do this, we cannot go forward, because, as I said before, each and every production activity uses natural system, and all of it goes unrecognized. In everything, in the national accounts, we have the Beyond GDP movement. I'm part of the relevant international consortia for that. But if you look at the national accounts of countries, do not yet use the Beyond GDP movement. We have ecosystems valuation. I'm part of that as well, but ecosystem valuation is not part of the everyday lives of any company or any government. Even in Europe, where we have obligatory regulation of ecosystem valuations in our cost-benefit analysis, as per the Green Book of European policy. So we have a lot of history on this. So we have enough to start the true collaboration on the companies. Let me say that we work a lot with companies, businesses. The business of businesses is to make profit. However, what we show in our analysis, both for business that are traded in stock exchanges, so in terms of portfolios of shares traded in a stock market, but also in businesses that are not traded in stock market, businesses that are just producing goods and services and selling them, not huge businesses. You can see that if you can articulate the risk of a company, of a business, according to SDGs or ESGs, and actually we have created an AI methodology that transposes the SDG framework into the ESG framework. The ESG is the environment, governance, social framework, that is basically used in the financial taxonomy in the regulations of the European Green Deal. But what is the message here? That if you can articulate the risks that the businesses face according to the SDGs, and we have developed a methodological econometric approach that allows you to do so. And if these companies are investing truthfully, not in a greenwashing way, to reducing those risks, then you have a win. Because these are the companies that have the higher returns, the higher profits, because they manage to lower their costs by lowering their risk, by improving the efficiency of their production line, and by increasing the market share. Because nowadays, the markets, the people, the consumers are interested in more sustainable products and services.
Well, thank you, Phoebe. And I will say thank you, Mark, because time really flies with you talking. It's really interesting to see all what you see. But what I can see here is that we maybe in a year time, we will invite you both again to discuss about the evolution of this report, how has been evolving. But I think, unfortunately, EOcafe is set by 1 hour. We cover by 5 minutes already. It is really, I'm sure that the rest of the participants are like me, that they wanted to know more. So maybe we still have some minutes that offline. This is also allowed in EOcafe, but I take the floor for now to Tanya, because it's now closing and inviting the rest of the people. So thank you so much, Phoebe and Mark. Thank you so much.
Yeah, also thank you from my side. It was I didn't take part in the conversation, but super interesting, and I'll be happy to hear also how Earth observation can contribute to the GSDR or GSRD report. And yeah, maybe we can have an update on this New Year's time, or you know, after the report comes out. But yes, in the meantime, thank you so much everyone for joining. Our next EOcafe, this is our last EOcafe of the year, so happy holidays already to everyone, a few weeks in advance. And we will be back next year on the 22nd of January. And this will be an EOcafe with Simonetta Kelly from the European Space Agency, who will be giving us a bit more insights on what happened after the CMIN. So a good way to close and to start next year. So I will now cut the recording. And for those who have time, we can stay on and still exchange a bit with Phoebe.